Okay. Well, I'm sure a few other folks are going to join us in the next few minutes. And I see folks are introducing themselves in the chat. Thank you so much for doing that, friends. This is the McCuho family. And so we're just going to go ahead and get started and have a good, relaxed, informal conversation with some very smart people in our region. I feel very fortunate to have had the opportunity to work with everyone on our panel for a few years now. And I appreciate their friendship and long-term work that they do in support of the students on their campuses and for our association. So you will please welcome all of these folks. Yay, we're glad that you're here. And we're going to go ahead and get started with Director, here I come, moving up the career ladder. We've got some slides of our panelists, and I'm going to ask them to give a very quick overview of how they got to their position or whatever else they'd like to share with the group. And then we've got a series of questions that we're going to ask the panelists. And then we're going to open it up for you, our participants, to ask questions. So if you've got questions, write them down so that we can get to them before the end of the session. So let's get going. Okay. Oops, sorry about that. Skipped over a couple folks there. Okay, Shana, how about you starting us off, please?
Quick introduction, I'm Shana Austin. I currently serve as the Director of Housing Operations at Temple University. I've been at Temple for 7 years and in this role for, I think 3, going on 3. You could see my some information about me, but I would say I took a traditional path. I was an RA and I had an amazing dean who created a resident coordinator position for me. And that really got me excited and piqued my interest about being in residential life, particularly in university housing. And I haven't left ever since. You know, what I appreciate the most about this work is that it's not the same thing every day. And I get to learn new skills and challenge myself and grow and learn. And I've found things that have become my passions that I didn't even know were inside of me. And so I am appreciative for all my colleagues who've pushed me to think differently. And I'm excited to talk to you guys today.
Super, thank you. Okay, moving ahead, Stephen.
Hi. Oh, hey, Tori, I see you. Hi, everyone. Stephen Corres, he, him, his. I am currently at the Curtis Institute of Music in Philadelphia. I've been the Director of Residence Life here for about a year and a half, and what a year and a half it's been, both professionally, personally, and even with the pandemic happening. My kind of career trajectory is in many ways similar to many other people that have kind of come into this field. I was a student leader as an undergrad, heavily involved, as you can see. Like I was, you know, student government president, Greek life, RA, obviously. And then from there, graduated. I went into corporate America for a little bit and saw that that really wasn't for me. And then I went and started working at a nonprofit organization in Newark, New Jersey. And that kind of started sparking my wheels a little bit. And I decided to go back to grad school, get that very important master's degree in our field. And then from there, I just went on to residence life, did some side work in Greek life and Title IX and a few other things. And now I'm in Philadelphia as the Director of Residence Life.
Thank you so much, Stephen.
Thank you.
Hi, all. I'm Joanne. Unlike Shana, who was a traditional path person, I came into higher ed through the non-traditional path. I was not an RA. We didn't have RAs when I was in college. I'm dating myself here. I had a house mother back in the day, and the stories I could tell you about her. Oh, I learned how to not be a good res lifer because of her. So it was a good time. I was working at a school for the deaf, learned sign language when I was a Girl Scout. So School for the Deaf worked out well for me, and then decided it was time for a change and got into higher ed because the school I went to, which was at the time Western Maryland College, it's now McDaniel College, was looking for someone who could sign because they had hired a deaf RA. Well, I fit the bill. And I've been at exactly 2 institutions in my higher ed career, Western Maryland College and St. Mary's College of Maryland, where I am no longer, I hate to say this, in residence life. I'm not even in student affairs anymore. I'm the Associate Dean for Retention and Student Success, and I fall into the Enrollment Management Division. But I still identify completely as a student affairs professional and as a housing and residence life professional. That's my home. McCuho is my home and my family, as is Akuhoai. But I was the director of residence life for 23 years, so I know a little something about it. Very glad that everyone is here, and moving on, Crystal, share with us, please.
So I'm the Assistant Dean of Residence Life and Conduct at Caldwell University. It's a small private Catholic institution in northern New Jersey. I had an interesting path also. I mean, I was an RA and I did become a grad, but for a little while before I was a grad, I went to work for a mortgage company. I don't really tell people that all the time. So I do have mortgage licenses and things like that. And so I've done a plethora of things, and then I did get into the field after grad school. My grad work is not traditionally in some of the things that most people in Res Life go into. A lot of folks are some sort of higher education leadership, counseling background, things of that nature. And mines are in criminal justice. And so I always get that systematic question when I'm asked, so we see that your background is all in criminal justice. Why student affairs? Why this and why that? And I have this really canned answer about how learning criminal justice is learning a system. And as long as I can do systematic things and, yada, yada, I know how to talk. So I found some canned answer to answer that because I just got so much slack for it over time. And so you don't have to always be in the traditional roles or the traditional things to do stuff. I became an interim director of residence life when I was 24 years old. And that is very, very, very unlikely. And I know I was at a small institution, but there were lots of challenges and things that happened coming along with that kind of thing. So, just don't shy away from anything. You can be a director. You can be in that type of role, no matter what your situation is. I'll be able to share more later.
Super. Thank you so much. Okay, Debbie, how about sharing with us, please?
Hey friends, Debbie Scheibler, the Director of Residential Learning at Rowan University. I did follow a pretty traditional path to where I am right now. However, I'm in my second directorship. Prior to being at Rowan, I was at Wilkes University, where I was the Director of Residence Life. And so that has been an interesting transition to come to a second position at a similar title, completely different experience, because we're talking about very different institutional makeups and especially very different times in where we are right now. So that has been an interesting perspective that I would love to share more about with folks later.
Super, thank you. Okay, folks, now we get to the meat of what we're doing here. Whoops, not that far. Some questions for our panelists. So, folks, please explain why you've stayed in housing and residence life. Crystal, why don't we start with you?
So I stay a lot in residence life because of the interactions that I have with my students. I always say that I love, now that I've been at this institution for 6 years, and I know that sometimes when folks get into director jobs, they look at that like, well, 5 to 7 years, I'm going to transition and I'm going to leave. But I really feel like what's more important is staying at a place where you love to be, that values you as an employee. And if that means that it's 3 years, or if that means that it's 10 years, then that's where you decide to extend your career, to kind of share your life. And, I love seeing a student come in their freshman year and watching them graduate 4 years later, sometimes 5, that's okay. And watching them graduate, one of the roles, we have to work graduation. One of the roles is that I get to walk the students up to get their degrees. And for me, that comes full circle. And I get to see, and I remember the conduct conversations I have with certain students sometimes. I develop some of the best relationships with students in conduct, which you wouldn't think that. You think they'd be so mad at you. But yeah, I stay because of the impact of students. And to be honest with you, I think it's so easy for us when we do this job for so long to become complacent and think we know it all. And I think sometimes when you're working fresh with students, they remind you that you should never stop being a student, that you're always learning just like them. And I think that when you can make that connection and understand the true meaning and the value of why you take those steps every day to your office, or maybe in this new climate to your computer at your home, you remember the reasons why you do that. So that's why I stay.
Yep. Thank you. Shayna, you want to answer this one?
Sure. I think my answer is really similar to Crystal. I think I said before, I appreciate how we're ever evolving. It's always changing and it keeps me on my toes. Another passion of mine is developing others. And so the fact that I get to create opportunities for folks, some folks who look like me, that's very important for me. Representation is very important. And so to create spaces for people to come into this work and to learn and to continue to grow and advance is important to me. And I want to do for others what has been done for me. I have been very fortunate in my career to have many people see talent in me, get excited by me, and create spaces for me to move and advance and to learn and to grow. And so I want to do that for others. One of my personal values that I think is reflected definitely in my team and in my work is to make your community better than what you found it. And my dad would say that when I was a kid, and I was like, dude, you're killing me with this, but he's right. And so that's what drives my work. And I feel like we can do that by creating and investing in the future. And that's our students. So that's why I keep doing this work.
Excellent. Thank you. Debbie, would you like to share?
Sure. This work is hard, right? Because this work is really, really hard. And frankly, I'm good at it. And that isn't meant to be self-centered, but we need folks who have strength in this work to stay in this work. And this is a place where I can impact that. I am good at this. I can build strong teams. I can use my privilege and my position to lift others and create spaces where those might not have been before. I love to connect my staff to the next step for them. And I love that. Right? Like that's what fills my cup. And so that is really why I stay. Absolutely, we can all change the world and I can change the world on my campus and I'm going to, and I have, but it fuels me to be part of a family, the Makuho family, the Student Affairs family. Now more than ever, our work matters. And we need good people who are good at this thing to stay in this thing.
Absolutely right. And I posted something in the chat. Everyone needs to engage in shameless self-promotion, folks, because if you don't sing your praises, who will? Let the world know what you're good at doing and do it. Do it to the best of your ability. Stephen, would you please answer this question for us?
Sure. I think, my answer is going to sound very similar to what everyone already said, especially Crystal and Shayna. Conduct is one of my favorite aspects of the job. And one of the reasons why is because I love seeing the growth and development that happens through conduct. I can think of countless times where I meet a student in their first year, not for good reasons, obviously. And I see the growth and development that happens throughout the course of those 4 years that we have them. I see where they learn from their mistakes and grow and develop and really just, become these amazing students that, we knew we knew that they had it in them to become. And that's one of my favorite parts of the position. The other part, I think, is the mentorship and the kind of, the mentorship and supervision aspect of it. I love seeing new professionals grow. I love seeing that, some of my former staff is in this, current group right now and seeing how they've grown and become these amazing professionals in their own right. So that's one of the things I really enjoy about this field, especially residence life, because I think we really get to do it more so than other areas, functional areas of student affairs. So those are the reasons why I stayed in residence life and continue to stay.
Fantastic. Thank you. So let's move on to our second question. I would like our panelists to please respond with a particularly difficult challenge that you have faced let's not include COVID-19, okay? Something that is not related to the current pandemic or the social justice issues that we're dealing with right now, okay? What was it that you had to deal with? How did you respond? What was the outcome? Maybe one or two takeaways of what you learned from that experience in your role as a director. Stephen, since you were fourth on the last one, how about we get you to start this one?
Sure. I'm going to actually talk about a challenge that maybe might be a little bit more relatable that I saw as I was growing into residence life and kind of going up the chain. So one of the things I learned early on about myself as a young new professional, entry level and even mid-level, was that I was big on advocating for my staff, for my RDs, for students. I was all about fighting the good fight and ready to take on anyone. It didn't matter who it was, president, vice president, AVP, and all. Beware. And I learned rather quickly, and I say quickly, probably a couple of years, that you really in this field need to pick your battles and really figure out what are you willing to, as one of my former supervisors and mentors says, what are you willing to die on the sword for? Do you really want to die on the sword for having that late night program? Or do you really want to die on the sword for letting that student, not get a certain sanction? Because you don't want to then become the individual in the division or in the department that consistently is fighting some battle. And I learned that early on, and it really took a lot of coaching and mentoring from both internal and external folks that I knew through Makuho on how to maybe choose my words a little bit more wisely, think about things before I jump the gun on them, and really assess everything fully before picking a battle. And I think that's one of the things I wish I learned sooner on in my career as an entry level, that I really think that you need to just pay attention, because as you get into the director level, you can't die on the sword, as they say, for every single cause. You really have to pick your battles. And I've seen that more and more now that I'm on a president's cabinet, where I have to give, opinions and give my thoughts on things. I can't advocate for every single thing, or I can't support everything. And that's the tough part. And that's really the hard part. And one of the things I try to do is be transparent with both students and staff if I need to be, and let them know, look, there's certain things, this is something I can't really push for, and give them an explanation why. And I think that's something that as you move up in the field, I think is really important to note. Pick your battles wisely and choose them before you start jumping the gun on things.
Very true. Yeah, Zach, Neil, your comment about, yes, this is what I feel passionately about. Well said. Okay, Shayna, how about sharing your particularly difficult challenge?
So I do want to preface this by saying this is not, my challenge wasn't necessarily when I was a director, but I want to talk a little bit about when I came into Temple, and some of my colleagues are here, so I hope they'll extend me that grace. When I came into Temple, I came into a new organizational restructure where the residential life department at that time had created 4 new leadership positions, and I was the only individual that was hired as an external candidate. And so when you talk about organizational culture, this restructure was designed to change the way in which the department works. But when only one person comes from the outside, one of the lessons that I took from that is about really understanding organizational culture. And so coming into a space again as someone new and really having to learn the culture and be able to navigate within it, to try to usher in change, right? I was hired to change the way in which we hired people, we recruited people, the way in which we operationally functioned as a department. And so, and then on top of that, and this is where I hope my colleagues give me grace, I ended up supervising one of the other finalists. And so it was a really challenging situation. I thought I think I am a pretty good supervisor, and it pushed everything that I knew about leadership and supervision, and managing people's perceptions about me. right? And so I came into a space where people thought I was the other, and they were not necessarily excited. They had a colleague that they loved that they thought should have the job, and this lady came in. And so really very quickly having to be confident, having to learn that culture, having to be able to assert myself, and not only with transparency and honesty, but also bring structure to a system that was completely new. So it taught me a lot about extending grace, that people deserve grace at all levels. There's context that because you work in that institution, and there's something new that that person's bringing that you don't know. And how do we, have humility and extend that grace to people? And that colleague who was gracious enough when I came into this role really taught me empathy. I am a very structured, very direct person. My team probably will support that in the chat. And that person really taught me that compassion is equally as important as all those other things, and transparency and honesty and building trust together. And so that really reinforced those lessons for me. So that was probably one of my most challenging but rewarding experiences in my career.
Thank you. Crystal, what about you?
Sure. I'll preface also by saying that I think there's not one answer to this. Our challenges happen like every year. There's a new freaking challenge, if not more than one. I think about how I'm so passionate about my career, and in July I was ready to go work for Starbucks because I just couldn't take the pressure anymore. For me, it moved from stress to pressure, which is something I think can be really different and detrimental in a different kind of way. So, but I'll share something that might be for folks who are trying to get into like a director role or something like that. What was my biggest challenge when I first got in? Never mind the fact that as an interim director, I was 24 and I thought I couldn't do it, right? So all my ageism came in, and imposter syndrome in a sense, if you want to say it. But I think one of the biggest things that I learned and what was difficult for me was not expecting everything to be so succinct and black and white, right? This is wrong, this is right. I tell people all the time when we talk about things like this is that as much as we want to say right and wrong, I feel like when you get into roles, mid-level management roles, into senior level roles, you learn the grayscale. I think that is so important to understand and learn. And it kind of tacks on to what Shana and Stephen are already talking about, right? And understanding perceptions about how people, how you're doing with them and how you're supervising them. And Stephen talking about, choosing your battles, right? What's important. And so like this grayscale thing was really difficult for me because I would find myself to be, I used to rule with an iron fist, right? And I'm like, I don't understand. Person broke the policy. This is what has to happen, right? And what it taught me was assessment. What it taught me was understanding the background of where the student is coming from, understanding why a policy is made the way it is, understanding what I need to fight for in the levels that are above me and the thing, that grayscale was so important in trying to figure out, and I think we use that word transparent all the time in senior housing roles. And I've had mentors tell me that, like, Crystal, you just make sure you're always transparent with your staff and make sure you're always transparent with people. And, I just have a very different philosophy. I don't think we should be transparent about every single thing. I think the better word to use is opaque. I think we need to be able to show things as we need to and protect. I think as directors, I have protected my staff sometimes from things when they couldn't feel the heat because of everything that was coming down. And that was another hard lesson in learning the grayscale and learning sometimes how you have to take that pressure and that heat to protect the people that are below you, or the people that you serve, I should say, not below you. So that was the hardest thing for me, learning the grayscale, learning better how to assess certain situations, so that I could serve other folks the best that I can.
Thank you very much. And I'm going to share a particularly difficult challenge that we faced on my campus, what I like to term the semester from hell, which was the fall semester of 2011. it was a fascinating semester, to say the least. Some of you may recall, if you were working in the Mid-Atlantic area, in late August, we had an earthquake hit the area, which was followed a few days later by tornado warnings, followed by a hurricane that very next weekend. For us, we were opening that weekend and we had to delay opening in the first few days of classes because the hurricane did hit us. And that also created water infiltration in our buildings. As housing and residence life folks, you probably want to know about your facilities side. Even if you're a res life education side, you need to know the facilities side. You need to know about operations. And that came in very handy because in our case, we ended up having to close 2 of our residence halls at midterm because we had mold in the 2 buildings. We are located on the St. Mary's River. And to deal with closing 2 residence halls, to do what the remediation for the mold situation, we had to move our students someplace. So for a week, they lived in hotels. The furthest hotel was 45 minutes away from campus. So rather than have them go the second half of the semester commuting that distance, we brought in a cruise ship, a river cruise ship that could hold 240 people. So we moved our students onto a ship, which was fascinating. And as some of you have heard me say, I can now put cruise director on my resume because I spent quality time on that ship. What I learned, and it worked out well. We had the entire campus help the students move onto the ship. We did lots of wonderful things to help the students on the ship. It's something they will always remember for the rest of their lives when they come back to campus now for reunions. They always talk about the ship. I'm sure some of them still have the t-shirts we gave them, which was great. But it was a fascinating semester because it allowed us to use some creative thinking in terms of getting out of that box. Oh, we have to live here. No, if we brought in a cruise ship. It also allowed us to get lots of campus support. And that happened because we had worked very hard in the years leading up to this point to build that support. So it's really important to start early, building those relationships with the people on your campuses, to engage people when you can, so that if and when you need them, they can be there to support you, just like you need to support them. And also learning about flying above the radar, because I personally like to fly under the radar on my campus. But in this case, I was very much above the radar, but doing so with grace and making sure that everybody gets some of the attention, the positive attention, and not just have it focused on one person, me in that case, but to share the wealth of the positive feedback. And then when there were problems, taking the heat, which I did. So that was a particularly interesting semester. I will add that during that semester, we also had our first case of bed bugs. That was a ton of fun. And the semester ended with my doctor calling me and telling me the day that we were closing the cruise ship and moving the students off the cruise ship to go home for winter break, he called and told me I had a brain tumor. True story, which of course is now no problem. But it was a particularly difficult semester. I thank the people I got to work with, including my Makuho family, for the support that they gave me, which leads us to the next question, sharing an especially fond memory, happy moment, and how you benefited from that experience. My prior 12 months from September of 2010 to December of 2011 were really hard for medical reasons. And had it not been for my Makuho family and my colleagues and friends, I would not have come out of it as well as I did. So build those relationships, folks. You heard me say it a moment ago. I'm going to say it again. Those relationships will get you through the good times. They'll get you through the bad times. Build the relationships. Okay, Debbie, you want to start us on this question about a fond memory, happy moment?
Sure. I think I might be the only panel member who's done this. I had 2 kids when I lived in. And I don't mean live on property, I mean live in property. There's a difference. It was when I was working at Rutgers University Camden, which I loved working for Rutgers University Camden. But I was in a 2-person apartment with ultimately 4 human beings, and 2 of them not potty trained. And so that really was quite the experience of having 2 very small children in a residence hall, physically going into labor in my building, stopping and having contractions at the front desk, hanging out with our security officers, just things that that you reflect upon, to Joanne's point about the people around you and supporting you. What that did for me, in addition to being a live-in, live-on professional, as a director, it continues to be something that I keep on my focus in terms of advocating for my live-in staff, especially those who have partners, especially those who have children. But it has also allowed me to see the work that we do in higher ed, specifically in student affairs and residence life, through the eyes of my children. And if you have been at some of the past Makuhos, you have seen my kids there. And if you saw when I became the president of Makuho, my speech, my daughter was on stage with me. And she walked that stage the whole time I gave my speech. But I would not have had it any other way, right? I have a res-like family through and through. When I would leave for duty call, my children knew what that meant. They have a deeper understanding of diversity, equity, inclusion, access. They have been to programs. My daughter has danced on stage with Shangela. Thank you very much. So like, I could never, ever, and never would trade that for anything in the world. And it has brought such a facet to their life that I will be eternally grateful for. So not only do they have that experience, but they also know what their mom does, and they know why it matters. And that is something that I hold close into my heart personally, and something I try for my team to know, that family is always the most important thing in the world, chosen or blood. And as a director, I advocate very strongly for that for my team.
Thank you, Debbie. Crystal, Shana, Stephen, anybody want to jump in and continue answering this question?
I guess I can go. For me, I have a ton of amazing memories from this field. It's been a wild ride so far, but one of the things that I really loved the most, that brings me joy every time I think about it, is at a previous institution, we had some issues with our summer internship program and how that wasn't very successful, and we would get assessment back that our interns weren't happy, that they left, the summer not feeling as though they got anything out of the program or anything out of the position. So I took it upon myself to recreate the program that was in place and to revamp it and do some fun stuff, so to speak, I guess, with them, and put them in contact with different departments and different areas of student affairs and our institution. And through that, I also was a lot more intentional in the folks that were hired, and building almost like a cohort style of roughly 7 to 8 different interns. And I think about the 3 or 4 summers that I ran that program at my previous institution, and how those summers were probably some of my favorite summers as a professional in this field. I really got to know our interns because I was running the program. I got to really connect with them. And I say this all the time, I value and look up to a lot of folks who are seniors in this field and who have been around the block. But I also really value the relationships I make with undergraduate students, and especially new professionals and graduate assistants, because number one, they keep me in the loop of everything that's happening and what I need to know. they also keep me young. I didn't know what TikTok was until one of these kids told me here. Like these are the kind of things that it's a beneficial thing. I'll help you get that next job, that next step up. I'll be a great reference and I'll support you. I'll put you in contact with the Crystal Lopez, with a Debbie, with a Joanne, with a Shayna. But, I need you to give me something in return. Give me some of that youth culture so I know what to talk about and don't sound like I'm 80 years old when I am talking to my students. And through that, I make some really amazing friendships, and I see them in this room too. And it's just been, I smile when I see how they have grown throughout the years and have become these amazing new professionals at their institutions. And it just makes me smile every time I think about that program and those 3 or 4 summers with those students.
Nice. Thank you. In the interest of time, I'd like to open it up so that folks can ask our panel some questions. So if you would, please use the chat to ask any questions that you want to hear from our panelists. In the meantime, maybe one of you could share with us what you like and dislike about being a director. And this is a reality check, folks. Let's not gloss over stuff. Let's be real. Who's going to start?
I'll go. We have been talking about campus politics in so many different ways. We've named it, and we've also talked about it in generalities. As a director, you are in a political sandwich all the time. You are a champion for your staff. You are a shield for your staff. It is exhausting at times. It is rarely the glamorous position that perhaps you thought it was, but it is a worthwhile position. It is an important position. I will say the best advice that I was ever given was that you don't know until you sit in the chair. And I think that that is really true. We can talk in hypotheticals, but until you sit in this chair and until you are hiring and firing, impacting people's money and their lives, making decisions that you know are going to be unpopular, advocating till you are blue in the face and still coming up empty, advocating till you're blue in the face and winning, you don't know. And so what I would definitely say, echoing back to what my colleagues have said, surround yourself with good people. Also surround yourself with folks who will be that mirror for you and will tell it to you honestly. Because you do not want to be surrounded by people who are like, you're the greatest director that's ever lived. Oh my gosh, you're amazing. Like, that is not going to help you. You need to be around folks that are going to keep you honest, keep you grounded. And you need to know what you're here for.
Thank you, Debbie. We've gotten some questions, folks. What are the biggest hurdles for making the jump from entry to mid-level and then from mid-level to director? Anyone want to take on the biggest hurdles? Crystal?
I mean, I think it depends for everybody, depending on your institution, where you're going into and how those transitions are happening. But I would say that one thing I think is pretty consistent in all of these roles is supervision and how that changes. I always say, and I feel that, once you're at a certain level, perhaps like mid-level, you're managing processes still. And sometimes when you get to that senior level, you're managing people that manage processes. And so that can be a major difference and hurdle as you're going through the process. And I think that it doesn't matter how many books or how many of these Makuho sessions you go to, no one's ever really going to tell you how to be the best supervisor. I struggle. I'm not the best supervisor either. I think a lot of people meet me and sometimes they're like, oh my God, Crystal, you're so inspirational. I want to come work for you. And I'm like, I don't know if you really want to work for me just because, I'm that kind of person. And yes, this is who I am. And yeah, we have these moments during staff meeting, but I think the best thing that a supervisor can always do is like, always go back to what I said before. Remember that you're still a student and you're still learning. Make sure that you listen to the folks that are in those positions that you're supervising, because sometimes they help you make your decisions. And I really do think that one other thing that might be kind of consistent on all levels as you transition is, the decision-making process at each of those levels. Because like the decisions become sometimes the impact that's happening at certain levels just impacts so much more. And just to kind of go on, like, what do you not like about being a director? Sometimes is, always having to make the decision. And I think that, and whether or not whatever institution you're at, because let me be clear, sometimes a director level at one institution does not really mean that at a different institution. Sometimes your director is making decisions with the cabinet. And at other times, a director has to talk 4 or 5 levels before you get to that to be able to get something done. And so really the makeup of your institution will really depict, that level of pressure sometimes and what you're dealing with, sometimes your frustrations. I have colleagues that are in roles like me and they're like, Crystal, you're frustrated about making those damn decisions. I'm frustrated about not being able to make those decisions. So that comes with this, the institution where you're at sometimes often reflects what that stress level and pressure looks like for you and what you may like or not like about where you're at. But I hope I answer that question for you, Ali, I think those are 2 major themes that are always a big hurdle, your supervision and decision-making processes at each of those levels.
I just want to say really quickly, I think the biggest hurdle is getting someone to take a chance on you. And so I will say to all of you, master the work that you're in now, and then look at the position where you want to go and what skills and, abilities do you need to develop to get to that next level. But it really is about selling people on who you are, because I'll be honest, none of us have all the experience to get us to the next job. Right? I came into my role. Did I ever do housing per se? No, but you have to sell them on what abilities you have and how you can transfer the skills that you have. And so that is the biggest thing, getting people to take a chance and a gamble on you. And it's all about how you sell your skills, your abilities, and your talents.
What a great segue into our next question. What advice can you share for someone who is applying to director level roles? What skill sets should we highlight the most during the interview process? I'll jump in here. To get to that director level, got to know your operations, got to know your facilities, got to know budget, and how to do all of the work with those 3 areas. What other skill sets do folks need?
I would say leadership and supervision as well. That's going to go right there with that, an organizational structure.
And know how to collaborate with other departments and other folks successfully as well.
Budget management, trends, numbers. You're going to ask questions like that. I don't have that background, but I taught myself.
Numbers, data, don't shy away from it. And if you are a res ed person and that's not something you ever think you're going to do, you will not go far.
That's right. Okay, folks. Next question. How do you balance a family life with the workload of a director?
I'll go.
Okay, Debbie.
There's no perfect formula. And it's going to be different for everybody depending on your partner, depending on what your family makeup is. I have been really, really blessed that for the majority of my career, my partner has been a stay-at-home dad. That has been tremendously helpful in terms of supporting our kids and being able to allow me to pursue what I want to professionally. For some folks, that isn't an option. That isn't something that you can do financially. You might not have a partner, a lot of different things, right? For me, it is about valuing that for myself and valuing that for my team so that it is okay and normal and part of our culture that if I have to go because somebody is sick. My husband is sick right now, so now I don't get to go to campus and do something later today. Unfortunately, like that just happened, and that is just the way that life works, and so we kind of work with that. But surrounding myself with folks that get that is a value of mine. Again, for me too, I'll bring my children to things that are appropriate. They've been to more Makuhos than some of my colleagues in the field have. And so like that is part of my identity. It's who I am. It's what is important to me. And so I've made that a part of what we do. But it's having those healthy boundaries. It's having kind of the self-awareness to step back for that. And it's, again, surrounding myself by the right people who are supporting me and enabling me to be a professional and to be a doctorate student right now. Like that's a whole nother layer that I threw on top of things. So you want to make sure that that you just have a good system around you, whatever that looks like for you.
Thank you, Debbie. Okay, another question. The director position comes with a lot of eyes on every decision you make. How do you keep your positivity when others may dislike your decisions?
For me, and that's happened a few times, I came into this role and I was asked to make some major decisions and change some policies that students were not really happy with. And some of my colleagues also thought were not the best. But I think one of the things that helped me along the way is having these folks in this room to go and toss around ideas and talk about how can I effectively communicate this information. I can't tell you how many times I've spoken to Crystal and Jocelyn and a few other people and just say, I gotta drop a bomb. How do I do this? And kind of talk it out and vent. And then also, have those important conversations over Zoom nowadays with some wine where you're complaining about folks and you just want to let it all out and feel good. That's really been helpful for me. Having somebody outside of my institution, because it is very hard. That's the other thing. Be careful who you speak to or vent to at your own institutions, especially when you're at the director level. I have learned that at previous places. So I take—
You see all the hands in the air for that one, Stephen?
Right.
Like we're all like, yes.
Yeah, like you got to be careful who you're talking to. And because of that, that is why I have Joanne and Shayna and Crystal and Debbie and all these Olin, all these other people, as well as former people that I've mentored to kind of talk to and get feedback from. So that would be one of the things I'd keep in mind.
I'm going to say really quickly, and this would be like my advice for everyone: honor yourself in everything that you do, right? And so it's about values-based decisions. And, if you feel like you made the decision that was best and in line with your mission and your values, then you could go to sleep at night feeling, whether people agree with it or not, you get to go to sleep at night and feeling good about the decision you made. And I also am very fortunate to have an amazing team of colleagues, and particularly my housing ops team. I feel like they keep me grounded, they keep me honest, and they will challenge those decisions I make, because I talk to them before I publicly would make any decision. And so having good people around you. So the support network that Stephen talked about, but I've been able and very fortunate to inherit and then build a really strong team of people that I respect and I trust and value their opinion. And they're not yes men. They will say, you are crazy and add a line on this and let's dial it back. And we'll do that together. So, thinking about honoring yourself in every decision and everything that you do is really important.
Folks, believe it or not, we only have a couple more minutes. So I'd like the panelists to share with us one piece of advice for people who aspire to a director's position, and let's keep it short. And for those of you who have asked some really great questions that we don't have time to get to, Julia, will we have the opportunity to respond after this session ends?
I will copy and paste the questions and email them to you, Joanne.
Fantastic. And then we will get back to all of you with some answers for your questions. We don't want to leave you hanging. We can also arrange to meet with you outside of the session through some, Zoom meetings or by email, whatever, because we want to provide support for you. Okay, so Shayna, how about, do you want to add anything else to your advice? Okay, Crystal.
Let's see. Just know that you can do it. Put it that way. If you got your Oppie hat and your Eddie hat, and like, Debbie said before, you have to, there are some folks that I've heard them say in the past, like, I'm not an operations person. I don't want to do that. I want to be, there are some positions where, maybe you might be focused on just residential education or training and development, sometimes larger institutions, but you never know when that portfolio is going to switch you into a different realm. I use Shayna as an example. Shayna was, I think, the assistant director of training and development at one point, where she's doing most of the training and onboarding and things. And now she's in a housing, operations role where she's maintaining the operations of an entire institution. And so I think, you have to be open to learning all of those things. And I think it is how you sell yourself, what Shayna said, because I don't care what they tell you. Oh, you need to have all this supervision. You need to have all these things. I think one of the questions that somebody asked or something was like, how do I get there? You sell yourself when you don't have the role, you don't have the experience. It doesn't mean you don't have the experience. You have the experience, and you have to tell them how you're going to transfer that skill and be able to do it at a larger scale. That's all you have to do. So I'd be willing to meet with anyone privately. If you send me an email or anything like that, I can set something up to answer anyone's questions. I'm available to all of you. So
Thank you. Debbie?
Crystal hit it on the head. I was going to say the same thing. If you don't have the skill set, actively seek it out and then figure out how to articulate what you already have. No one is going to hand you the opportunity. You have to be hungry for it. You have to look for it. If that means it's a nonprofit, if that means it's volunteer work, if that means it's working with your synagogue or your mosque or your local, Boys and Girls Club, do that thing. Seek out that opportunity. Articulate it clearly. You have the skill set. You just have to sell it correctly, articulate it correctly. Any one of us up here on the screen are happy to bounce back ideas with you, hear your pitch, take a look at your resume, but you have it. You just have to claim it, sell it, find it, be hungry for it.
Thank you. Stephen?
Yes, really quickly, have an exit plan and have your own exit plan to move up through the field, whether you're going from RD to assistant director or assistant director to director. You're the one who knows when the right time is. You might have folks sometimes in a supervisor role who might try to encourage you to leave before you're actually ready to leave. Really, you're the one who's in control of your destiny and your career path. And if you need to be an RD for 3 years, then so be it. Then you're an RD for 3 years. If you need to be an assistant director for 10 years, then so be it. You're the one who knows what's best for you, your lifestyle, and what you think is the next step for you.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you to all the panelists, and thank you participants for joining us today. We ask that at some point before Friday, please do the program evaluation. We would sure appreciate getting the feedback. And thank you. Take care, everyone. Bye.